Hey guys, how's it going? This is Khan, Mr. So Real, and welcome to another episode of the State of the Game for The Division. This is going to be for July the 27th, 2017. So I don't really know how I feel about this State of the Game. In my opinion, there was some really good information regarding some things that people weren't asking about, but there was also a lot of unseriousness playing around and kind of I don't know, yeah, let's just get started. All right, so getting to this week's State of the Game, I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible and give you guys a list of the important information that you need to know. So first of all, this State of the Game had pretty much nothing to do with incoming changes to game mechanics, systems, striker, SASG shotguns, or any of that stuff that you guys are probably interested in finding out about. None of that stuff was talked about. But the important information that you do need to know is that the PTS3 will probably be coming to a close at the end of this week. So yeah, play it and forget about it, because probably next week it won't be around. The final bug fixes and balancing and stuff for all of that is what they're focusing on right now. So they're not really thinking about any major changes, but if you have any, game breaking information, then you can give them that information, and hopefully it'll get put into the game or fixed, or at least they'll know about it so that they can put out a patch. The PTS contamination, they know, is high, and it is being looked at and being adjusted. And in terms of game stuff, that is all they talked about. And for an hour, almost an hour long State of the Game, you'll probably be wondering, well, what the hell did they talk about? So what they did discuss and what they talked about was about the encrypted caches. What are they, why they're in the game, and what purpose do they serve? So this was a rather odd State of the Game, mostly because they were talking about these encrypted caches 3 weeks or over 3 weeks into the PTS, and they never really actually covered much of it to begin with. So for the people who don't know what they're about and who were not invited into the PTS, the encrypted caches were a way to get cosmetic items, and strictly cosmetics items, not classified gear per se. They were mostly for cosmetic items that you could use on your characters, and a couple little things here and there. So I made a pretty long list of things that you guys should know about. Otherwise, if I put up video of each and every one of these things, you do better off just watching the whole thing. If you would like to watch the whole thing, go over to the Division channel on Twitch. You can check it out there if you like. But if you want to go through this, and I'll try to go through this quickly, and there is going to be a lot of information, and again, this has nothing to do with game changes and things like that. This is only going to be about these encrypted caches and cosmetics. So if you're not interested in encrypted caches or cosmetics, then you're pretty much done. There's not really much that you need to hear about. It's just going to be about encrypted caches, cosmetics, keys, key drops, and all that other stuff. And there's actually going to be some numbers thrown around. But if you're looking for information on the SASG shotgun, striker, new sets, new gear set, none of that is going to come. I'm giving you the warning. Hit that like button, because I kept it real. All right, so now we can get started. For these caches, for these very special encrypted caches, what is the purpose of them and why are they in the game? So they are a way to put cosmetics in the game and make them attainable for people who don't want to actually spend money but still get the cosmetics. The keys haven't been set in terms of their pricing, because you can buy the keys if you'd like for actual real money, but the pricing has not been set. But it's supposed to be a better value than purchasing the items outright, like let's say in a bundle or something like that. Now, whether that's an on sale bundle or a full price bundle, that was not discussed, but that was what they said. Now, the caches are supposed to be generous in terms of their value for spending power. You should get 100 or more than 100% return in terms of how much you spent and what you're going to get. That was the number that they use throughout the stream. There are 5 total collections. Now these things, this is the first time I'm hearing about this, but they were talking about collections, and you get those only from the encrypted caches. Now there will be 22 collectible items in the game or in these caches, and they will belong to 5 collection sets. There will be 3 collections with 5 items, 1 collection with 4 items, and then 1 collection with 3 items. And then once you have all of the collections, you will have another special collection that is only for, for having all of the other collections previously mentioned. Now each collection gives you 1 part of the astronaut set. That is the very special set, and it's pretty much the ultimate cosmetic item set for this version of the encrypted caches. Now they said, well, they were kind of hinting around to encrypted caches being a thing that they could explore in the future. There may be other encrypted caches, but depending on how things go, they're going to see how it works out and if it works out for them and for players as well. Now the collection items cannot be bought. That is something that you really need to understand. The collection items that are in these sets cannot be bought with straight, I guess, credits at like the special vendor. They just have to come out of the caches. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, every time you open a cache, you're raising your chance to get an item from the collectible set. And once you have all 22 items from the encrypted caches, which means all 22 of the collectible cosmetics, then you're pretty much done. You won't need to open any more until they decide to update the caches or have any new kind of updates with the caches. But once you have all 22, then you're kind of done. Now there are 4 rarity tiers for the 4 kind of ways that we look at the cosmetics and regular items. So if you think about things, you have your common, your uncommon, rare, and then you have your high end. Exotics are not a thing when it comes to these collectibles, but that is how the loot pool is going to work in these 4 rarity tiers. You're going to have common, which will be about 60% of the stuff you'll find in the loot pool. You'll have uncommon, which will be about 30%. Rare is going to be 7%, and then the high ends are going to be about 3%. Now these values may change depending on how things go, but don't expect anything super amazing like high ends going up to 20%. That's probably not going to happen. But they do have some systems in place to make sure that you as you open caches and as you get things, you will start to get closer and closer to the items that you need to finish out your collection. So it's not just like a flat thing where you have a 1 in 100 chance of getting something if there's only 100 items. Most of the items in the loot pool for the encrypted caches are items that were largely items being sold by the premium vendor. About a third of those items are going to be new or yet to be seen items, including weapon skins, emotes, and new outfits. Any other items that are associated with the encrypted caches that are not part of a collection will be purchasable from the premium vendor at some point in time. Either they've been sold or they will be sold in the future over the coming months. But as it is, the stuff that is not part of a collection will be available at the premium vendor if you want to just hurry up and grab it right away. Now the pool and the list of items at the vendor can be manipulated. They distinctly said it, and they will adjust, remove, and continue selling items depending on the performance in terms of sales, popularity, etc. And that kind of brings me to ask, what about blueprints and the whole thing about we can't change the Navy MP5, that can't be touched, we don't know anything about it, blah blah blah, but you can touch these things that are being sold at the vendors depending on how well they do in terms of sales. Seems a bit sketchy that stuff is okay, but the things that people were trying to get for free are not. Seems really kind of iffy to me.
as we talk about, there is an overlap between the premium vendor and the cache. So one of the big questions we've seen, and one of the big debates, is that, if we're looking at monetizing content, why don't we just take everything and put that in a premium vendor directly? Why did we have to, or why did we decide to make the encrypted cache?
So I think there's a couple answers to that question. And your desire to accept these answers, I think, has a lot to do with your pre-existing opinions on business and companies and et cetera. But a couple reasons. One, it's always good to experiment with different business models and see which ones work well and which ones don't. The premium vendor is very straightforward. It's easy to understand. But it's also something where players have to interrupt the thing that they're doing. They go out of their way and they're going to a shopping experience. It's a little bit different than the idea of a mystery box, which actually has some production value behind it. There's some sort of kind of entertainment kind of imbued in the very idea of the mystery box itself in opening it and et cetera. So it's just a different application of a monetization system. And then it's important for us to look at those applications and see which one works better for our players, which one works better for the business model, which one seems like it's more sustainable. And knowing that is going to be really important. The other answer is that increasing the amount of revenue that we have just in general is a really important goal for us, because it helps us to make the argument that, hey, this is a game that warrants continual reinvestment, that really is something that our players are into. We have ideas for different kinds of businesses that we can build off of the base game. So that, to certain people, is a really important thing to be able to show, and a very critical thing for them to approve continued investment and continued funding for all of the things that we're building that are, for instance, new content, new game systems, new features, et cetera, like you're going to see in 1.7 and like people are going to see and be very excited by in 1.8.
In these caches, you can actually get duplicates. So like if you got this item and you roll another cache, there is a chance that you're going to get the same item again.
Yeah.
There was a discussion, like why do we allow duplicates? Why not just make it so that once you actually got this item, there is no chance whatsoever that you will have it again?
Yeah. So it's tricky. We've talked about this a couple times, and I'm sure you're sick of hearing me say that it's tricky. But there's sort of, if for instance, let's imagine that we have a system that has 100 items in it, or let's say it has 30 items in it, just to make the math simple, right?
Yeah.
And each time I'm getting 3 of the damn things, and there's no duplicates at all. What we've basically said is, this is a buy 10 keys and you get all the items system, and that's it. And at that point, there's not much of a difference between adding that to the game and just putting a bundle on the premium vendor that charges you however much 10 keys is worth and just gives you those 10 items.
Yeah.
The only difference is the order in which you're going to be getting them. But eventually, if there's no duplicates and there's no actual chance of having that randomness, that means you're just going to check them all off in one go. With this system, we have a couple different things that kind of make that not be a reality. One, as I mentioned earlier, there's kind of a desire to have the progress through the mystery box be guided by the collections. So once you knock out all those collections, you can kind of consider yourself done. You've gotten most of the things that is going to be yielded from the encrypted cache. So we have a lot more items in there than collection items. So there'll be a lot of other things that you could be getting while you're waiting for those collectibles to get finished, right? So that's one thing. Is it hopefully is something where people who are getting and playing this thing and able to go into the game and grind the keys, they're able to go and go to the premium vendor and open the caches, and have an entertaining experience just opening those caches, waiting for their last pieces to come out. And it isn't just a, hey, buy 30 items in a box kind of thing. So if we got rid of dupes, we would lose that mechanic. Now, that being said, we have talked a little bit about maybe with future releases that we will remove dupes. And it is something that we're kind of continuing to discuss, because there's positives and there's negatives to doing it.
Yeah.
I think what would end up happening is if we got rid of dupes, we would end up having to have some other kind of bottomless compensation in there. So you can imagine maybe this isn't an example of something that I think we would do, but it would be something like a currency where, okay, I got a 500 Phoenix credits pack, or here's 1,000 a Dark Zone credits pack, and those would be placed in with the regular rules, so that it wasn't just purely it's 10 times through this and I'm finished. You know what I mean? Then at least we would be able to have more than just a guaranteed set of maximum rolls before you're done using the system.
Yeah. But then if you're touching currency with real money, then we are...
Well, yeah, that's why I said it's not a great example. So a better example
slow
would be
down here,
maybe
slow
doing
down.
something like if we wanted to, what do we call them? The key fragments. So we've got key fragments that you get when you get a duped item. You might imagine seeing the key fragment packages being something that you're getting. So, I got 10 key fragments in this box, but I don't actually get it's not a duplicate item, it's just something that would roll as an award to help pad out the total number of awards, so you don't just have a fixed number.
Yeah.
Right.
So why don't we do that? Why don't we allow people to trade the items?
So, I mean, trading is another thing where there's a lot of positives and there's negatives to it too. I think that once you introduce trading to a system like this, then you do end up with a system that could potentially be used as a gambling system. And now I have an item that is valuable, and I have an outlet for it. I can trade this to you outside of the game. You can send me some bitcoins or whatever, and I'll give you my hat. That opens the door to the potential for actual gambling, and we've seen in other games too the repercussions of doing that thing. So I think that that's pretty scary. And isn't something that I would want to do. The flip side is that, of course, it's incredibly satisfying to actually be able to have that outlet and be able to trade items. The economy that it builds up amongst players is actually really interesting and really cool to see, and it is entirely driven by players and players. The marketplace for what people are willing to spend on buying those kinds of items or trading those types of items. So, I mean, there's definite advantages and there's disadvantages to it. At the end of the day, we don't have any sort of like auction house system. We don't have any sort of player trading system in the game, and I think that we wanted to maintain that kind of cleanness of not having to worry about introducing something that could lead us down the road towards people actually, buying and selling things on eBay or whatever.
So it's not completely a closed door, but it's more like the idea on paper could actually be interesting, but it's just that the implications in terms of like real money trading and like actually then suddenly putting an actual monetary value on an item, then it becomes...
That's right. Yeah, I
becomes
think
an
as a concept, it's incredibly interesting. It's a very evocative idea to say, okay, we can have this player economy, and players are going to be able to trade all these things. It solves a ton of problems with us having to figure out what to do with an item that, hey, cool purple hat, but purple's not my color, man. I want an orange hat.
Yeah.
So this thing's not for me. I can trade it, and I can go get an orange hat.
Yeah.
That's a very cool thing. And my background is working in MMOs, and so I'm very used to games that have that as sort of a cornerstone of their design. So from my point of view, I like it. I think it's actually a really powerful thing. But at the same time, it does open the door towards some of these behaviors and some of these concerns that I think rightfully so are something that should be avoided and something that we definitely don't want to be encouraging or pushing the game towards.
The fragments.
Okay.
Because that's one of the things that has been driving a lot of the criticism, which is the fact that the fragments are extremely rare on the PTS right now.
Right.
And that's not something we want to keep, right?
No. We looked into the data on PTS and saw what the rates that were, what the theoretical rates that at which players were going to be getting keys, and it was significantly below where we wanted it to be. We actually just boosted the rate on named NPCs from, I think it was at 3% for named NPCs in the Dark Zone and in the Light Zone, and we boosted that up to 20% now for key fragments. So that should have them dropping quite a bit more often. Yeah. They're also attached to a lot of commendations. So when 1.7 goes live, there's going to be, hopefully there'll be a feeding frenzy on people going through and completing commendations and knocking out the different commendations that they want. And that will, we hope, drive some of the early kind of mystery box or encrypted cache usage, so more people are able to get a look at it through just knocking out some of those low-hanging fruit in the commendations table, which is really a good thing. And then, as I said, at least at launch, we'll have it on commendations, and we'll have it on named NPCs.
Yep.
But then over time, we're looking at ways that we can add it to last stand rewards, survival caches, so we can have it in underground. We can have it in more places than just getting dropped as normal loot.
Yeah. So the named NPCs right now, that's Dark Zone, Open World.
That's right. Yep. And we're looking into adding it to mission bosses and things like that as well.
Okay.
So, I'm hoping that most of those changes go through, and that we have a really, I think, surprisingly generous drop rate of these, because again, it is critical to us to have this be an avenue that people can go and get cosmetics and vanity items without being forced to spend money to be able to do it. So we want it to be attainable. It shouldn't be an immense grind. And in fact, I'll give you guys the numbers. We targeting, like my target number for it is that somebody should be able to get a key for the encrypted cache, roughly, depending on like how hardcore of a grinder you are, somewhere between 5 and 10 hours or so of gameplay, you should be getting one. So you should be getting a key fragment at least every hour, if not faster than that. You should be getting one of these things.
Okay.
So 2 or 3 play sessions in, and you should have a run at it, and that's that's better than you will have gotten 3 vanity items for with grinding ever before.
So lag. So no lag. Yeah, there's a bunch of things about lag. No, lag is something we're looking at, and Matt can also talk about it because he's also in the middle of all these discussions. But yes, obviously, there's been a lot of complaints about lag for a while, and especially even more recently. So that's definitely one of the top of our priority list thing that we want to look at.
Definitely. Every week we have several different live operations update meetings where we are looking at what are the big issues that players are talking about right now. Are they bugs? Are they exploits? Or is it cheats? Is it lag? Is it Mike and Delta errors? Whatever the big kind of hot topics of discussion within the community are, we're looking into and we're trying to figure out. And you know what? We end up spending a huge amount of time with our server infrastructure team digging into, well, why could this be more laggy now? Why is it adding more stuff? And it's unfortunate because a lot of that time and a lot of that effort doesn't always translate into results.
Yeah.
So it can look like, oh, well, these guys aren't paying attention and they're not spending any time or they're not spending any effort on trying to fix these problems, when the truth, that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
There is a lot of effort and a lot of time being spent on doing it. But sometimes these lag issues, I don't know how much we want to talk about, but like a lot of times the lag issues come from things like adding new features to the game.
Yeah.
We add a new feature, for example, in like legendary mode, we have higher fidelity AI. And when you start running higher fidelity AI on the servers, that ends up costing the server CPU.
Yeah.
And that can cause the server to get more laggy.
Yeah.
So as we are improving the game and adding more things to the game, increasing players' inventory spaces, things like that, all of these can have a repercussion of potentially making the server more laggy. So the infrastructure guys are constantly kind of looking and triaging the different features that we're adding, trying to figure out if this is going to make the game worse or make the game slower, and then flagging different features. And we work with them quite a bit on it. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things where we're always looking for more information. We're always trying to get logs from players talking about what their connection status is or what their connection problems are. And it's just a tough problem to solve with online games like this. You're always dealing with lag one way or the other.
There was one example also of thing that could lead to lag and decreased performance, for example, was also with mobile cover. When people were cheesing mobile cover, and there are still ways to do that, but using mobile cover in some specific collision situations that allow you to go through walls or whatever, and then we've added more and more security checks by the game to make sure okay, you can put a mobile cover here, you can put more there or whatever, and then that just increases the load of not only the server but also the client on your side as well, of all the checks you have to do, and that can decrease your performance as well.
It's completely true. It's like if you imagine our game as like a big armored truck, right? And it's driving over a bridge. And over time, you're patching the armor and you're adding more stuff to it. You're trying to protect it from, shit, now they're shooting at us with rocket launchers. We need to cover the tires with this new stuff. And, you're constantly patching and adding and adding and adding more things to protect the game or things to fix problems with the game. Yeah. And it ends up making it heavier and heavier and heavier, and it gets a little bit slower as it's going across the bridge. And it's hard to balance those two priorities at once. Yeah. But again, that's something that we have a lot of people who are dedicated towards looking into those types of problems, and they spend, basically all of their time looking into them. And they fix a lot of things that ends up helping 1/10 of 1% of players, and they fix some of things that help 100% of players. It's really, really hard to get it to the point where 100% of people are happy 100% of the time with the way that the connections work, especially with a game like this that's been live for 2 years and has had a lot of add-ons to it over those time.
And it's just adding all the things, because to be fair, I think there has been some kind of degradation of the situation with latency and all that over the time. Some people are mentioning since 1.6 in particular. So that's why we've always had this kind of effort at trying to improve performance and all of that. But lately we've renewed that even more, and there is like a very deep investigation going on right now into all the things that you mentioned, like what could be the potential causes of that? Are these new features? Are these inventory increase? All these kind of things, trying to find out if there is one common root, or if it's just an aggregate of plenty of other issues.
Right.
Some people are just like, well, you should just invest in better servers. If that were so easy, I think we would do it, and we would have done it already. Unfortunately, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
It's more complicated, but yes, to answer the question, yes, lag is a concern, lag is an issue, and lag is something definitely that we want to address.
Yeah.
So,
and nothing I was saying earlier was trying to make excuses for it or say that, oh, well, we've done what we can. It's an ongoing battle that we'll continue to fight, and it absolutely is our responsibility to make sure that the game is part of having an entertaining game is having a game that works really well and works consistently and isn't laggy. So we know that job number one, above and beyond anything else, is to keep the game entertaining and keep people excited to be able to log in and have a good time.
Yeah.